Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to take a look at Chapter 26 of the hot new manga, Kaiju number 8. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say that this is not my favorite kind of chapter, but before we get into the spoilers, I will give you a chance to click off and go read the chapter yourself. Meanwhile, check out the link below the video for some funny stories in Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a book of human absurdity. Now, onto spoilers. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this chapter. It is quite simply the rising beat of the combat arc. What's that now? Well, in classic shonen battle manga, you are going to have quite a few battle arcs that will last several chapters, and then twice that many episodes when the anime comes out. It is fairly simple. It is step 1. In step 1, the combat is engaged. The heroes are usually caught a bit flat-footed in this kind of battle arc. There is a lot of initial combat damage as they find their footing. Then the first step ends in this state of chaos. The second step, the one we are in right now in Kaiju number 8, solidifies the action scenes and get everyone set up with their opponents. Everyone who is going to face off with an opponent in the main battle is matched with their specific opponent. Their combat style is revealed and expanded upon. This is the part of the battle where Wesley says to Ingo Montoya, "I am not left-handed." The third step is where the battle begins in earnest. This involves most of the serious and awesome combat. This will often be stretched out into many episodes in the anime. Then you have the final step where the battle winds up and the heroes fall back to lick their wounds and heal. Now, whether the final step is the 4th, 5th, or 6th step depends a lot on the current story arc. This early in the story, I would expect it to simply be the 4th step. The longer battle arcs that involve plot twists usually involve an act of treason on one side or the other, or an intervention of an outside force. These early battles usually end sooner and without major plot twists. They are about showing off the combat skills of the cast. And especially, this is not my favorite part of any manga, especially the second step where the combat starts to rise and the opponents are all sort of sifted out. I know a lot of people really enjoy it. I have nothing against it. It's good writing. It's just not the part that I enjoy the best. Now, but this step did show off the skills of the cast very well. It pretty quickly establishes several important bits of data. We learned in the application story arc that the average combat strength for a Kaiju Defense Force officer is around 20, 25, 30%. We know, however, that Captain and Vice Captain of the 3rd Division can both draw over 90%, but that they are prevented from doing this most times by a limiter. Now, we learned that among the officers currently in the 3rd, that Captain Mina and Captain Hoshina are the only ones in the unit who can do that. This makes Shinomiya hands down the 3rd strongest warrior on the base, meaning that no other officer comes close to her 50+% combat ability, despite her young age and them being much older and more experienced than she is. Now, this has a lot of implications, but the one I want to focus on now is that this gives us a good measure for how much trouble Japan and the world are in at this point in the story. Because we know from an earlier drop to world building that Japan has experienced the most attacks of any nation in the world, and that these have been going on for hundreds of years, meaning that all the nations will be fairly well adapted to face them. One can reasonably presume from that, added to the presented fact that Japan still has a stable economy, that the Japanese Defense Force is the best in the world at dealing with Kaiju attacks. Knowing that the 3rd Division of the Kaiju Defense Force is Japan's Show Division makes them the best of the best. This has implications. See, schools, research stations, any organization that has a reputation for being the best will begin to attract the best, as a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is how schools like Harvard keep up their reputation. Harvard very well might not have the best teaching style, but their reputation attracts applicants with the highest IQs and the greatest work ethic. This reputation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can see this in Reno. Reno is a natural talent, bright, hardworking, and able to use his not insignificant ability to its maximum potential. He clearly states to Kaffa that he grew up under the protection of a completely different division, not the 3rd. But Reno moved to the big city to apply to the 3rd Division because of its reputation. The 3rd Division has the best, and so the best apply there. This also includes the heir of a company that makes the combat suits and the very best that the military has to offer in the way of soldiers. All of this is besides the fact that this was the chosen destination of the daughter of the commander of the Kaiju Defense Force, Shinomiya. So, now have a division of the Kaiju Defense Force that naturally has the strongest, and the most cunning. Out of this division, we only have 3 officers who can combat the most powerful of the increasingly dangerous Kaiju threat. This spells trouble for the rest of Japan and the rest of the world. If the most prestigious division that attracts the best applicants from the most advanced nation in the world can only find 3 officers capable of meeting this new challenge, then how are the rest of the anti-Kaiju units going to fare the world over? Earth is in for some hard times in this story. That was an interesting little bit of world building that this chapter brought to fruition, but it was only one small part of the chapter and relied on information from previous chapters to give it weight. The better part of this chapter was dedicated simply to character development, as this type of chapter often is. We have a wide cast of characters here that we're getting attached to, and there's a lot about them that we still don't know. This chapter develops Shinomiya first. We are shown that despite her high-handed bluster, she is at heart a humble and patient soldier. She talks aggressively. She knows that her father is the head of the defense force. Still, she is shocked when the 3rd Division makes an exception for her. She expected to be treated like just another soldier. When the situation calls for her to be advanced more quickly than is usual, she is shocked. For all that she acts arrogant, she is at heart nearly the perfect soldier, expecting to be and content to be one of the team and not given preference. We get an adorable little glimpse into the character and psychology of Vice Captain Hoshina as well. When the Kaiju is on its rampage, destroys something that costly, Hoshina gives a yelp of dismay. In a very classic oldest sibling moment that's quite in character with his mom friend description, he yells at the Kaiju something to the effect that those things cost money. Now, this is a funny joke in of itself. It shows Hoshina's competence on one level. Even with this frightening monstrosity of power trying its best to kill him, he has time to think about things like the cost of keeping doors open. A common enough trope in manga to display someone's power level, but it also stacks it very interesting with 2 other factors I noticed in previous chapters. One, the English translation consistently gives the very competent Hoshina the accent of someone from the sticks, a country bumpkin with an education who is not shook off the dust from the farm from their habits. Hoshina talks low class, to put it bluntly, but this seems to contradict point 2. 2 being that Hoshina comes from an old kaiju slaying family of samurai with over 400 years in the kaiju neutralization business. That would make you think of wealth and old families, and the imagery associated with this explanation backed it up. There was a traditional Japanese mansion, and presumably an ancestor of Hoshina's standing around in the robes of the well-to-do. So, on the one hand, we have a bumpkin hit Hoshina, as hinted by the very deliberate accent, and we have the son of an ancient and wealthy family Hoshina, as indicated by the backstory. Now, I think this 3rd little glimpse into his character blends those 2 elements nicely. Hoshina as the conscientious, cost-minded older brother of a large family. To understand this, let's take a look at the real-world samurai. They existed in an era where private soldiers were a large part of the defense plan of any nation. As the world changed and private soldiers gave way to national armies, the samurai slowly lost their wealth and power, but often managed to hold on to their landed properties, the families becoming farmers who sent a large percentage of their sons into the military. This is a gross oversimplification of a complex era of history, of course, but it does provide a nice context for the character of Hoshina. His family used to be wealthy and powerful, but the shifting culture left them with only their farmland out in the country. Hoshina probably grew up both training to subjugate kaiju and being mindful of every yen that was spent. This explains his high level of competence, contrasting with the hick accent, and his yelping about the cost of the damage Kaiju number 10 was causing. That is nice storytelling. I think we're going to find that Hoshina is a big brother with a fairly large family. This would explain his mom-friend discipline style quite nicely. Interestingly enough, this is the first chapter where Kafka hasn't appeared, which does make sense. This is a longer combat arc, and those do tend to focus on individual fights and often lose sight of the majority of the cast. It is interesting that the series is willing to shift the focus away from the hero like that, however. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Is it shocking that Shinomiya is so humble? Does Hoshina come from a large, cash-strapped family? Let me know your own theories in the comments below. I do like hearing from you. Check out the link below the video for some funny stories, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a book of human absurdity. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.